Another Friday means another Mailbag Friday, so let's get to the questions next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. And you can also catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For the first-time listeners, here's how the format works. We bring you episodes Monday through Friday, and we bring you 60-second recaps after every single game. Last night, ran into a little bit of a hiccup when it came to connections, but tonight I'll be able to get a recap up after this Cole Reagan's Jackson Jobe showdown. But we bring you those episodes usually after the game, unless we have any crossover episode like we did with Jacob yesterday, or we just have to do one in the morning, right? Mailbag Fridays typically are done in the morning. I had a work conflict, so I'm bringing you this really right before first pitch for Game 2 in this series against Detroit. Now, as for this Mailbag Friday, not going to be able to get to every single one. It means that this podcast continues to grow. We get more and more followers, more and more questions. We're close to 60 questions today. So if I miss your question and I don't answer it in this episode, just reach back out to me either through Twitter or leave your response on this YouTube video below. Today's show is brought to you by Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Let's dive right into it. Question number 1 comes from Elizabeth. Could Hunter Renfroe's struggling be from non-consistent play? And do you think he could come to form having more consistent ABs? Unfortunately, when you're hitting like Hunter Renfroe is right now, you might only play a few times a week. And I know it's more so about rhythm in this question. You got to hit better than $1.16 to be in the lineup every single day. I mean, we also saw last year at times when Hunter Renfroe played every single day, he wasn't giving great production. And the only thing he can do right now is make the most of the at-bats they are giving him, and he is in the lineup tonight against Jackson Jobe. Things got to turn around quickly for him because I don't know how long you can keep a 120 hitter even playing every other day in the lineup. But do I believe it's a rhythm thing? I don't. I just don't believe there's much left in the bat of Hunter Renfroe. Next one here comes from, looks like, as I'm stalling here, Wilson. Just discussion piece here. Do you think our offense has a lack of focus? I feel like twice now our offense has done absolutely nothing. And in the 9th, everybody seems to start hitting. I don't believe it's a lack of focus. I just believe they're in a rut right now. They're in a slump. And what I keep going back to is only 20 games we have to go off of. If this stretch happened in June or July, you might be able to point back to a different time period where they got out of a slump. Whereas right now, we haven't seen them pull themselves out of a slump. But I don't believe it's a lack of focus. I believe that it's a bit of a depth issue. I mean, the bottom of the order has just not been good whatsoever. But the guys you're counting on to be run producers, Jonathan India, Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez, Michael Massey, they just aren't hitting right now. There's one guy hitting in the lineup, and that would be Bobby Witt Jr. But I don't believe it's due to a lack of focus. Next one here is going to be coming from, looks like I do a great job stalling with this on YouTube because I got to scroll up through all of these questions. And unfortunately, sometimes I do miss out on a couple of these questions. Next one here comes from Robert. It's early, but Melendez and Renfroe have to go. Renfroe is cooked. Melendez never was. We've seen enough. Do you think we will see John Rave up soon for the one of them? I just don't believe it's a permanent replacement. I believe John Rave will get a shot, but maybe not this early on in the season. I mean, Drew Waters was tearing it up in Omaha. He's done that now the last couple of years, and it doesn't translate to the big league level. So just because John Rave might be the best option at the minor league level, it doesn't mean it's going to translate to the big leagues. Mark Canha coming back likely tomorrow or Sunday can give this lineup a little bit of a boost, but I don't know if I'm there with one of the AAA guys being the answer. I feel that John Rave, Tyler Gentry, Joey Weimer, they're going to get their shot. But I don't know if it's going to happen in April. It might happen toward the end of May or maybe even early June. I'm not sure how long that leash is going to be on both MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe. The next one here is going to be coming from Jordan. Tonight's first game in Detroit, you notice that we haven't been able to get a lot of double plays that we go for. There's also been a lot of drops when it comes to transferring the ball. Is it just the cold weather or is it the lack of communication? A bit of randomness to it. I mean, I've got full faith that Michael Massey and Bobby Witt Jr. are going to be just fine up the middle. Cold weather can play a factor in that, but I also don't believe that cold weather was an issue last night. I mean, it wasn't 85, 90 degrees, but it wasn't as cold as it was in the last time the Detroit Tigers were home against the Yankees, which was like 30 to 35 degrees. Not a lack of focus, might just be, not getting the plays, done as easily. Like sometimes a bad hop, you have a bad transfer, but these are two guys you should be able to count on throughout the season to be very good defenders. Bobby Witt Jr., of course, being one of the best defenders in all of baseball, and Michael Massey is an above-average second baseman when it comes to defense. The next one here is coming from A&B. It feels like we hit about 18 line drives at 95-plus miles per hour directly at outfielders, and not many of them have even had the defense sweating. Are some of those just naturally going to become gappers if we keep the same process, or do they need to work on taking something off their swing? I always believe that if you hit the ball hard, it eventually starts evening out. Like, they don't need to hit the ball softer or have a slower swing. If you scald the ball right at somebody, that's just baseball. It's just unfortunate that it's not going to always result in a hit. But no, they need to continue to stay the course of hit the ball hard. Like Maikel Garcia, he hits the ball incredibly hard. That's got to stay the same. Vinny needs to start hitting the ball hard, because if you hit the ball softly, 8 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times, you're just not going to have as high of a chance to have base hits from that or extra base hits from that. And when you hit the ball hard, lesser opportunities for guys that, are going to be able to run that down. If you hit a ball 110 and it's a line drive, yeah, it pretty much has to be right at somebody for it to be an out. Where you hit a ball 85 miles an hour, they're going to have time to track it down. But not a bad question whatsoever. It can be frustrating when you hit a ball on the screws and it finds a glove in the outfield. The next one here is coming from, actually, I believe that does wrap it up for YouTube. So I'll just say, for anybody that had a question on YouTube and I didn't get to it, just respond in the video below here, and I'll try to get to it by the end of the weekend. But let's jump over here to Twitter. This one comes from Craig, I believe. I know it's a long season, but games in April count equally as those in September. Are we still preaching patience if the Royals miss the playoffs by 1 to 2 games? I don't believe we'd be preaching patience if that's the way it ended for the Royals and you look back to April and, the couple games they couldn't get going, that's why they missed it. I mean, you think about it, they had 76 losses last year. How many can you truly remember off the top of your head? Like, you remember the crushing losses, and that's what sticks with you. I'm just not sold that in about a month or two, we'll be looking at this stretch of games and go, I remember that Friday night in Detroit when they lost 6-1. It's frustrating. It's a bad stretch if they miss out in the postseason by a game or two, and we want to use April as the reason why they did. Sure, I can see that. But there's also going to be bad series in June and July and August. Like, you're probably due for one a month, even if you're one of the better teams in all of baseball. So we'll see at that point. I'm not there yet panicking about where this start is. It's incredibly frustrating, that's for sure. It's also been 20 games. Let's go over to, I might have actually just taken down the question that I was going to answer here. But we will start things off here with Chance's question. Which irrelevant Royals player from past teams, non-multi-year starter, would you add to this offense and to make it interesting? Example would be Justin Maxwell. I would say, you're probably looking for a bench player there. Let's go with, I'd want a little bit of pop off the bench, that's for sure. I would want somebody you could count on to have a home run late in the game. Justin Maxwell is actually a great example right there. I'm going to go with Josh Willingham. I'll play into the nostalgia there. I would love to have Josh Willingham off the bench just to run into one late. I know that wouldn't be the best example, but that's what I got just off the top of my head right now. Satchel's Page's question, realistically, what outcomes would have to happen for Hunter Renfrow to get DFA'd? Feel like he has, or he was in the same spot last season and he turned it around in May. Yeah, I mean, if he starts to heat up a little bit, they're not going to make any rash decision because of what he did in April, but things do have to improve rather quickly here. They don't have the luxury of him hitting under 200 for 2 months. And now that it's a contract year for him, they would probably be more open to cutting ties than really they were last year. But the clock is ticking there. I mean, he's got to start heating up here at the end of April and early May if you're going to see him out there, every other day in the lineup. Satchel's Page also asks, what are the thoughts on Benintendi trade if we're in a position and who would the White Sox want? No, I don't believe the Royals would go back to Andrew Benintendi just because of the contract. Riley's question, can we get some deadline targets and some targets that could be available early? Somebody has to get here and fast. It's tough right now to identify any targets of who would be available right now. Those usually pop up out of the blue. So unfortunately, I don't know if I could say some early targets. I mean, you just got to be eyeballing the teams that are out of it. When you look at Colorado, I want to say I brought up Brenton Doyle before, but Colorado, who the Royals will see here in a few days, it's just not a great team, and I don't recall many times that they've just been open for a fire sale this early on in the season. White Sox, yeah, you could try to strike a deal with them because of all the Royals influence that they have out there. Like Luis Roberts going to be a hot name, but I don't believe that he's consistent enough in the corner outfield bat or the outfield bat you need to get things turned around here. Taylor Ward's always a name I'm going to circle back to. We'll just have to see where the Angels are at by the trade deadline. Another name that might come up if we're thinking of teams that'll be out of it. I'm not sure Pittsburgh's going to be there. Maybe Andrew McCutchen could be somebody you go after for a corner outfield bat. But Pittsburgh's offense is struggling as well. So it's a very fair question. I just don't know if I can identify anybody right now because we don't know what these teams are going to look like at the deadline, and I'm not 100% sure who would be available for trade, before we've even hit May. All right, that'll do it for our first segment here, our first set of questions on a Mailbag Friday. When we come back, a lot of more questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our title sponsor today in Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with the top talent and grow your business today. Next set of questions is going to begin with Brian. What's the latest on Blake Mitchell? Thanks for the podcast and the awesome insight. You rock. Well, appreciate the kind words, Brian. I believe he is getting closer to returning, if I'm not mistaken. I actually read an article the other night where it did hint at him coming back pretty soon. I want to make sure I pull it up here so I don't get any of the dates wrong. But it appears that, he's trending and tracking to return rather soon. And I'd imagine he would just go right back to Quad Cities there because that's where he ended at the tail end of 2024. So I would say, by the end of April, we'll be seeing Blake Mitchell in some game action because I want to say that matched up with the timeline too when he broke his hand in spring training. Goose's question, based on the stats from last year, how do you feel about just letting Freddie catch Reagans moving forward? Where Freddie Fermin has a 1.97 ERA with him, Salvador Perez 4.38. There will come a time when I believe Salvador Perez will maybe just be catching 50% of the games and Freddie Fermin is going to be leveraged into that role. But when it just comes for Reagans, I mean, as the numbers are brought up there, I feel it would be a a good plan. It really just comes down to Cole Reagan's what he wants. If he wants to have Freddie catch him, I believe they would grant him that. But I also believe he likes having Salvador Perez catch him. So what I would say is it's the pitcher's responsibility there. If he wants just Freddie to catch him, he would tell the coaching staff that's who I feel the most comfortable with. But then you still have to find a spot for Salvador Perez in the lineup, which right now with the way things are going, shouldn't be too hard to find a spot in the lineup for Salvador Perez, even if he's not catching. KCR fan asks, has the league figured out Freddie or started to pitch him differently? Seems like since around June of last year, his production has evaporated. Yeah, it's not been a great start to the year for Freddie Fermin, but we also have to take into account he is a backup catcher, and some of the numbers he posted early on in his career, I believe, were inflated because of the unfamiliarity with Freddie Fermin. And not many pitchers had faced him at the big league level. Now there's more of a book on him, and it's all about adjustments. And some of the advanced data never really supported that Freddie Fermin was going to continue to be, a 275, 280 hitter. But as a backup catcher, if you can have great defense, hit 240, 245, I can absolutely take that on the roster. Gary's question, could MJ benefit from using a torpedo bat? Isbell has shown some benefit from it with a couple of big hits. It wouldn't hurt to try it at this point. It was nice to see him connect with one at Yankee Stadium, get the monkey off his back and the long skid that he had, but then followed it up with not very good showing the next night. Kyle Isbell might be able to be that driving factor of, hey, it's working for me a little bit. I'm connecting with the ball a little bit harder. I just got to make sure I connect with the meat of the bat. And if MJ wants to try it, I believe it's worth a shot. His style, his swing, I could see it helping him out because he does hit the ball hard and it can give it a little extra pop to the bat. So it wouldn't surprise me in the near future if we see him try out the torpedo bat just to see if he can get a little bit of rhythm from it. Matt's question, no questions this time, just statements. Number one, MJ needs to be in Omaha when the team gets back to KC. Number two, Renfroe needs to be DFA'd when the team gets back to KC. And number three, this hitting staff needs to go. Subpar numbers in year 4 means someone has to go, if only to make a statement. Well, the very strong statements there, that's for sure. I just don't see any of those three happening before they return to Kansas City. Hopefully they can get back on track tonight in Detroit. Bobby Litt Jr.'s question, seen a lot of hype around Jack Caglione early in the year. A lot of people wanting him called up to AAA and some even the majors. Is there a change in the timeline of when he'll be called up? 225 batting average right now doesn't seem like a rush to call anyone up. He's not going to be coming up in April. My best case scenario was the very end of May, which now that we've seen him go through his first slump of the season, that's going to always delay it a little bit longer. They're not going to call him up unless he is just destroying minor league pitching. When he does that, he'll be called up, but he's not the answer right now to solving the offensive problems. Maxwell's question, what would our record need to be around the deadline to be buyers or sellers? If you're going to be a buyer, I would say anywhere from like 3 to 5 games under 500 would be the absolute worst case to be a buyer. Anything under that, if you're 10 to 15 games under 500, you might look into selling some pieces and get, return to reload the farm system or, go after a couple guys who may be blocked in other organizations. But you invested in this team, and there are guys that came here on big deals to Kansas City, and it would take a lot to move those players. So as long as they, worst case scenario, are 5 games under 500, I could still see them being buyers. But if you're over 500, I would expect J.J. Piccolo to be very aggressive at the deadline. Tom's question is the Royals had 2 7-game losing streaks last year. They also lost 11 of 15 over a different stretch, if I'm counting right. Should that be a reason to not overreact to a brutal week they just had? Maybe the toughest road trip of the season right now, or should we panic? I'm more so on the first part there. I don't believe there's a need to panic being 4 games under 500, 20 games into the season. It's frustrating. It's also a tough stretch of games. If they get swept in Detroit, I said this on Twitter the other day, it would just be very frustrating, not a doomsday scenario. I would save panic time to being 15 games under 500 by May. Like if you're 15 games under 500, it's going to be really tough to climb out of that hole. But right now, I'm not in any sort of panic mood. Jason's question, any thoughts about giving Harold Castro a chance? The guy can hit. He always has. He doesn't add value as a defender, but he can hit, which we need more than anything. He'll be up in Kansas City at some point, I would imagine, mainly as a bench guy. We'll see what happens if Kevin Biggio can't figure it out. But again, it's just not a permanent solution. Like, if they're going to bolster this lineup, it's going to have to be either Jack Caglione turning into a star, from the get-go when he gets up to the big leagues, or it would be through trade and acquiring somebody, maybe even before the deadline. Castro will get his shot, that's for sure. I'm not sold that he would be the answer, or it would translate from AAA to the big leagues. Nate's question, even though it is still April, is there a scenario where we need to make moves very soon, or just ride it out and hope the guys come around? A little bit of both here. I am not going to rule out an early trade because J.J. McCullough is an aggressive GM, and if it really became a problem toward the end of May, it wouldn't surprise me, is all I'm saying. But they also need some of these guys to turn things around, and I have belief that they will. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will wrap it up as fast as we can on this edition of Mailbag Friday. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. And a reminder, if I missed any of your questions, I want to be sure I answer them in some way. Because we had about 60, I had to be a little bit picky on what I was going to be answering. If I didn't answer it in this episode, just respond below to this video, and I will try to have it answered by the end of the weekend. Next question comes from Justin. I understand that hitters slump, but is there a reason seemingly every single Royal besides Bobby and maybe Michael are going through one at the exact same time to start the season? Incredibly frustrating to watch so far. Somehow even fielding is in a slump too. Baseball's random like that. It's certainly not good that you have 5, 6, 7 guys not just slumping. I mean, in a catastrophic spot at the plate right now. I mean, you've got guys that are hitting sub 100, multiple hitting sub 200, OPS pluses that are so far below league average. Drew Waters and MJ Melendez have negative WRC pluses. Like, it's just not going well at all, except for, in my opinion, really one hitter. Michael's been fine, but it's not been as consistent as we saw at the beginning of the year. I will say this, though. When you have guys that are slumping, it almost just goes on to the next guy. But when you start to heat up and 2 or 3 guys start hitting, that's when it starts bleeding into the rest of the lineup. Because as they say, hitting can be very, very contagious. This one comes from Jack. Why hasn't Ursig pitched in 4 games when there were plenty of high leverage situations, especially in the 6th and the 7th against the Yankees? I wanted Lucas Ursig to pitch in the series finale against the Yankees. I thought he should have been in there to face Aaron Judge and the rest of the order because he'd only thrown 5 pitches in that Cleveland series. It is very apparent that if the Royals don't have a lead or they're tied, which this goes against the argument, but mainly if they don't have a lead, you're not going to see Ursig or Estevez. And that will definitely change the deeper you get into the season. But tonight, if the Royals are tied or they have a lead, I would fully expect Lucas Ursig to be out there. And who knows, maybe work multiple innings. Danny's question, when Canna comes back, will we see the Royals send Waters down, or could you see a different move happening? Yeah, I would say that that's going to be the move. Tyler Tolbert's going to be on the roster until Blanco's healthy because you want to have that speed on the bases. Drew Waters is the guy they called up to replace him, so I would just imagine it would be a flip-flop once again. Chance's question, how do we land Griffin Conine by the deadline? Marlins are notoriously selling their outfielders. They are, but that's also a young player I'd imagine they want to build around. They're in a full rebuild mode. Getting those young guys at bats is going to be their priority this season. I'd be very shocked if they were shopping Griffin Conine by the deadline. Bobby's question, do you think last year's success with runners in scoring position was an outlier season and we are bound for a big regression? It was a little bit of an outlier, but I also believe they're much better than what they're showing. Like, I think it's somewhere in the middle there where they're not going to be, producing 3 guys in the top 5. They're the best in the league with runners in scoring position. But I could see maybe one of them, and then you have those guys that are maybe outside the top 10, but they're not as bad as this, where you're going, 1 for 22 over your last handful of games with runners in scoring position. Breder Cagg's question, with the offense not working too great right now, I think it's time for Big Nelson Velasquez. He had 31 dingers in a full season of at-bats. Do you see a way he makes it back up? It's just so tough to expect a guy to translate AAA numbers when they've been in the big leagues before and it's not really translated. Other than that crazy run he had at the tail end of 2023, Velasquez just hasn't been good enough to keep on the roster. He's a bad defender, and if he's not hitting home runs, he's just producing a very high strikeout rate. He might get his chance, but I also don't believe he's been hitting that well in AAA to begin the season. Lance's question, why don't we commit to Jonathan India as the everyday left fielder? Garcia needs to be in the lineup every day and plays a better third. Massey must have proved incapable in spring. I just feel that, Jonathan India did have a better spring when it came to handling the outfield, but we know how Matt Quatrero operates that lineup. He's not going to pigeonhole one guy into one spot because Garcia is going to move around a little bit. We're going to see him at third. We're going to see him at second. We're going to see him in center. And for India, it's pretty much just left and third now. There was even a time where India was at third and Garcia was at second. And you go, shouldn't they just flip-flop? I mean, India is a second baseman, but it's getting more comfortable at those positions. And I don't know if we're going to see him just be pigeonholed into into left field moving forward so Garcia can play every single day. He's going to continue to move around all season long is my thoughts. Austin's question, the Royals have not scored more than 4 runs since April 4th. What do you think needs to change? And is there anything that can be done at this point in the season? I don't believe Alex Zumwalt's going to lose his job. I'm not sure DFAing Renfroe or Melendez is going to spark the offense. It comes down to the guys you're counting on to be run producers. They have to be better. Point blank. They just can't be hitting sub 200 and not coming through with runners in scoring position. That's where it starts, in my opinion. You got to cash in on the opportunities you've been given. I mean, last night, first and second, nobody out, 3 straight outs, bases loaded, 1 out. You have a strikeout and a pop-up. There has to be more pressure put on the opposing pitchers. And once that happens, I feel you'll see the offense, be a little bit more free and easy. Dynasty Lethal Protectors question, if the boys lose a series to the Rockies, will they finally make some changes? It's tough to say. I mean, it also matters what happens in the Detroit series. If they split with Detroit and they lose to the Rockies, I don't think that would happen. But if they get swept in Detroit and then they lose a series to Colorado, maybe it would be, making a move to send a statement, to send a message that, hey, what's happened in the first 25 to 30 games is just simply unacceptable. Jerry's question, what are your thoughts on moving Witt to the 3-hole and putting Garcia, who is hitting 270, and the 2-hole? That would give Witt more opportunities of hitting with runners on base and getting some runs in. I just feel that you don't want to mess with what Bobby Witt Jr. is doing right now. He's hitting well in the 2-hole. He was in the 2-hole all of last year. And Garcia, I don't know if you want to put too much pressure on him right now. He needs to continue to hit, be consistent down in the 6-hole or the 7-hole. And then if everybody can start hitting, maybe you can, worry about moving guys around in the lineup. But we'll see. I mean, maybe if things don't go well tonight, they can try to find a way to shake up the lineup a little bit more. Royals Glazers question, and I feel like we're actually going to fall about 10 short than I was expecting to here because we are running out of time. Royals Glazers question, though, what are the chances we trade for an outfielder within the next month or two? I would put it right now still sub 50%. I'd go 30%. But if things really don't improve with MJ and Renfroe and Kevin Biggio off the bench and Tyler Tolbert's not really going to be too much of a hitter, Drew Waters, if Mark Canha doesn't start hitting, then I would expect maybe them to be a little bit more aggressive toward the end of May and going into June. Aiden's question, I know the hitting coach isn't at fault. The offense is struggling, but I feel like it's a go in a different direction and get a new face to come up with a new approach at the plate. To me, when it comes down to a hitting coach, if they get along with the players and there's not any feuding there and you're not in a mode of we need to send a message, he's not going to go anywhere. Because I believe if you brought in somebody else, there's not going to be that drastic change that we're expecting. And I do believe it's too early to make a snap decision like that. The Rockies fired their hitting coach. The Rockies are also 3-16 on the season. The Royals are just 4 games under 500. So give it a little bit more time. But if we're here in June and July and the offense is bottom 5 in baseball, then who knows? Maybe you do have to make a decision at that point. Wyatt's question, who are some targets the Royals could go after to get the offense going? I think Bo Bichette could be a great pickup. Just don't see Toronto trading Bo Bichette. It's so tough to tell early on who would be available. The Royals had interest in Starling Marte for the Mets. They had interest in Brett Beatty, and those two guys I don't believe are hitting well at all. Taylor Ward, they've had interest in, but the Angels aren't going to move him this early on. So as of right now, you're not looking at any big-time available pieces until probably July. But they just need their regulars to start turning things on here, and then we're not going to have to worry about maybe making a move until about, late June, early July. Patrick Mahomes' right arm. Why are the Royals taking so many first pitches, 75%? Is this an organizational philosophy? I don't believe so. I feel that these guys are trying to work the count a little bit more. They know that when they're not hitting, ambushing the first pitch and popping up or grounding out, that's only going to keep the starter in the game longer. So I think it's more of an emphasis of they're trying to see more pitches, work the count more, and then punish a mistake. But it's not working right now. We'll see, though. Maybe 10 games, down the road here, we get to the 30-game mark. We'll see if they're still doing that, 75%, taking the first pitch. Levi's question, what's wrong with Vinny for his size? He shows little to no power. Do you think Jack ends up replacing him at first in the next year or so? I don't believe it'd be a replacement, but I would say that Vinny talked about it on MLB Network of his bat speed. Like it's been a bit of an adjustment, and he's asking, am I doing too much? Do I need to simplify things? I believe that's why we've seen the timing be a bit off and working back from the hamstring injury. I don't believe it's bothering anymore clearly, but it did kind of hamper that start to the season. But he does need to, get hot pretty soon. He falls in that category of being the expected run producer. John's question, is it possible Jack will stay at first base? I believe he's going to have to learn both positions just because when you're playing for Matt Cotrero, you're going to have to move around a little bit. So he won't just be a first baseman. I believe he'll be a first baseman and a right fielder. Kate's question here, as soon as it loads for me. Kate's question is, I'm really trying hard not to panic, but when will we do something with Renfroe? He's not good at all. At least MJ has upside, but a minor league option might be smart. What do you think about signing JD Martinez? I just don't see him being a fit for the Royals because he doesn't play the field. And I know that we would love to see a bat like that in the lineup, but he also might be asking for a little bit too much money for a guy that hasn't had spring training this year. But I wouldn't expect a move to happen with Renfroe or MJ. What wouldn't surprise me is a phantom IL stint if it gets really bad at the end of April. I know it's not great right now, but if they were still hitting a $110 and 0.88, I could see a phantom IL stint, which would then clear a spot on the roster up in Kansas City. This one comes from Amber. Would you like to revise your win count? Not just yet. 20 games is not enough for me to go back on my word there, which I had him at, I think, 88 or 89 wins. Still feel fine, but if we get to 40 games in and they're 10 to 15 games under 500, I absolutely would have to revise the win count. Okay, we can only get to one more here, so I do apologize for those that I didn't get to here. This one comes from Cy Berghardt. How much more time will we give Stratton and Renfroe? Both feel like they're costing us games. Chris Stratton might have the Sam Long treatment where it's a phantom IL stint. Renfroe, as I just kind of brought up, it's going to take this type of performance for another month, I believe. And then at that point, you might be forced to make a roster decision and bring somebody else in who can do a little bit better and hopefully a lot better than what you've seen from the corner outfielders. All right, I do apologize to the questions I didn't get to. I will just go on Twitter and answer some of those. Or if you just want to leave your comment or your question again below on this video, I will be sure to get to it by the end of the weekend. But that'll do it for us. Another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. We'll have a 60-second recap tonight after the game and on Saturday and Sunday. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.